Welcome everybody to NorCal Slot Car Scene. Tonight's video is about the state of racing in the Sacramento area. So this Zoom meeting is part of what we're doing in Northern California to get everybody together and talking and enjoying 30-second scale slot car racing. So I asked the Sacramento guys, including Paul Hendricks, Mario Alvarado, and Jerry, to talk a little bit about what's going on. So here's that video. The main topic tonight is about kind of the state and or the history and or what's happening currently or in the future. So whatever Paul wants to talk about. So I asked Paul to talk about racing in the Sacramento area because the Sacramento area has one of the biggest organizations or groups or whatever you want to call it of 30-second scale racing around. There's like, 5 or 6 tracks and typically anywhere from 10 to 15, almost 20 people sometimes. So I'm going to let Paul talk about it.
Okay, well, I was going to get a quick start. I don't know how much people know. I know some of the guys on here are part of our group, which we now refer to as the Gold Country Slot Car Racing Association, GRSA. But when we all started back, and I started back in slot cars probably about 8 years ago over at Sidewinder Raceway, met with Bill and Billy Strange, and Bill's still part of our group. And over there, they had 2 main tracks, a track called Atlanta, which was the bigger of the 2 tracks. And most everybody liked running on Atlanta. Atlanta, when they finally closed, was no longer operable. And it was given to Jerry, who's one of part of our group. He took it home. He's supposed to put it back together, but I think it's still in pieces.
We kind of wore that track out, almost literally.
It did. No, it was pretty worn out. That's why it came to use again. And there are other
the Sidewinder track?
The Sidewinder track.
Yeah, that's a cool track.
The other track was referred to as Florence. It was inspired by the Florence Raceway. And that track, I bought off them when they closed. I had to cut it into 4 pieces, take it home. The guys all helped me. We came up to my house up in Grizzly Flats. My wife was generous enough to let me put it in the living room where it actually fits pretty well in the living room. We bolted it back together, got it all done. Had to grade a lot of slots. It was a lot more work than I had anticipated when I got it, but it turned out to be a great track. It's a 4-lane wood-routed track. When we got it up there, Billy had never really landscaped it. So one of the guys, John Vina, who loves doing landscaping, came up to my house and he landscaped it just like Grizzly Flats because it's up in the mountains and there's snow outside. So we did a snow theme with bears and stuff on the track. And it's not great, but it works out well. It's something different than the other tracks that are out there. And again, 4-lane wood-routed track. And we've had up to 20 guys in my house racing. We do different events. We've done lots of different stuff up there. Typically, our group is about 10 guys. And then at my house and some of the other houses, we'll invite other people in who want to come, depending on how much space we have available. Right now, he's right. We have, let me see how many tracks we have now. Actually, we have 3 2-lane tracks, which is John Vina's house and John Roberts' house. Those are 2 small 3-lane tracks, and one's in a garage, one's in the living room. We have a 3-lane track at one of our guys' houses. He's a Viking, so it's called the Valhalla Raceway, and he's got it all landscaped. It's a beautiful track. It's 3 lanes. It's in his garage, and we have a great time at that track. And we have 3 4-lane tracks technically because we have the Speed Bowl at Sidewinder. Was their round dirt, sort of a dirt track oval, and they now have that track up and running. We have my track at my house, and then Scott, one of the other guys who's part of the group but hasn't been as active lately, has a 4-lane track at his house, which we race on every once in a while. So it comes and goes.
Yeah, I talked to Scott last week, and he's actually absolutely, totally retiring from RC racing. So maybe we'll get him back.
Yeah, he was in with us pretty much doing a lot, but then COVID came. He has a young daughter, and he just had to back out because he was more obviously concerned about her. So we all understood that. But he's a great guy, a great racer. So let me see here. Right now we race about, and this is a guesstimate, about 20 different classes. We're changing classes all the time. It's determined. We usually run about 3 classes per each race. We typically run our races every other weekend on a Saturday, usually starting time about 8 o'clock to 8:30, depending on whose house it is. We'll start racing about 9:30. We have race a couple different divisions. We have lunch, usually provided by the host, but sometimes it's bring your own lunch, depending on whose house we're at. Then we have another race in the afternoon. Sometimes we'll have 2 races in the afternoon. We'll do an IROC of some kind. The O-Track owner wants to do something special, they'll do an IROC. We've done team races several times, especially at John Vina's house and at my house. We've done team races where we'll have teams of 2 to 4, depending on what's going on. Sometimes we do a random draw when you first show up. You just draw names. It's like, okay, I'm with Jim Rose today, and you're with him, and you run Jim's car and your car, and then he runs your car and his car, and you work together. And those have been kind of fun. It gets people interacting with other people instead of the same groups all the time, and makes you have to learn to drive somebody else's car. It's not prepped maybe the way you want it prepped, but you learn driving skills, which I think has been very helpful. Well, for me anyway, it's been helpful. We typically run the same groups we had at Sidewinder, but again, we've added stuff. The F1 stuff's been very popular right now. We do a lot of F1 racing, a lot of Group C racing. Late model sports car, which when we were racing at Sidewinder, late model sports car was essentially anything after 1980. You could run any car you wanted that was built after 1980. And then we had classics, which is anything before 1980. And you could run whatever you wanted in those classes. Then we've got some more niche classes we've come up with like Scaly, you have to run a Scaly GT, or you have to run a Carrera GT or a Carrera DTM. And so we've done some of those classes as well. Right now, we're doing a Penelope Pit Lane series. Cars from Pendle Slot Racing. They're handmade. They're resin cars that we had to put together. Everybody had to build their own, painted their own, put the chassis and all together. And we've been having a series of races with that. It's actually sponsored by Pendle Slot. When I let them know we were doing it, they offered to sponsor the race, and we got some prizes coming for the guys who win that race. And
Those cars are really cool.
They're really cool looking cars. I wish I had some pictures I could show you guys, but I don't have anything here with me. But a lot of us, I have 2 cars. Some of the guys have 2 or 3. John Roberts, who's our resident artist, does some beautiful car. I mean, if you ever see John Roberts cars, I'm almost embarrassed to paint a car when I have his cars out next to mine, because it's like, okay, yes, John, I'm not very good at this. But he and John Vina also are very good at painting cars. They have great liveries. They look really nice. But, we're having a race right now. So we're on our 3rd. We've had 3 races so far, technically. And we're going to have 3 more. And then we're going to then they're supposed to send me prizes from Pendle Slot. I think we're going to get a couple of their brand new Scarab models, which is this with their latest Penelope. A lot of the guys are eager to get that. So we'll see what happens with the prizes. I'm not sure what we're going to actually end up with. But it was fun to be.
One thing real quick, Paul, on my YouTube site, NorCal Slot Car Scene, and on the Gold Country Slot Car Scene, there are videos of on the Gold Country. There's the Penelope Pit Lane, how to build it, how to race it in action. Yeah. I've got videos on Paul's track on Grizzly Mountain. I've got videos on John Roberts' track, which is Dread Pirate Roberts Raceway. So if you go on either of those 2 YouTube channels, you can see videos of all this stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, we've got a lot. The tracks have a lot of. All of our tracks are different. They're very interesting. John Roberts' track, interestingly enough, was originally my track. It was built by Billy for me for my house. I didn't have much room at the house I was at, so it's a smaller track, 2-lane. I was trying to find something so I could practice more, because I was working full time. Trying to get to the track to practice was hard. We were racing every Wednesday night down there, but all I ever could get there was for race nights.
And we get 25, 35 people down there.
Yeah, and it was hard to get any practice time and get racing. So I had that little track built. When I got the big track into my house, I really obviously didn't need 2 slot car tracks, so I sold the one to John Roberts. He's now made it look beautiful. It was just sort of plain. There was not much landscaping on when I sold it to him. He now has it look like an artist has developed this track.
It's one of the best I've ever seen.
He made a taco vending truck that's just out of this world that he's built by hand and he put together and made a taco truck for it. And it's just like, he does things I can't even think to do the things he comes up with. So he's got porta potties in there, and he's got, whatever. He's got a lady in the lake. There's a lake in there, and he's got a lady floating in the lake. He's done a lot of interesting things with
trash cans with the plastic liners.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
He's an amazing kind of guy, and he's been doing that. He's been doing modeling forever and slot cars, I guess, in the group. He's been one of the people I think raced with you guys, Jim, back before Sidewinder opened up in people's houses in the Roseville area. So this is my understanding. I wasn't part of that.
Yeah.
So Again, mostly we run time races with in our group. We've come up with usually 2 to 3 minute timed heats. It just is easier so that everybody. We used to run lap races, but then some guys would get their 20 laps, and some guys who aren't doing so well only get 15 laps, and it's like this is not fun. They want to get their full. They want to get the full time in like everybody else. So we run timed heats. Mostly is what we're doing now, and we don't award any prizes. There's no money. There's no nothing. So we tell people it's like I got the same prize you got, so don't talk about it. Don't be too proud of yourself. We just try to have a lot of fun. Mostly when we do our racing, as I said, we have lunch. It's sort of an event. We sit down and talk. We have a good time. The guys, it's a great group of guys. It's probably one of my favorite group of guys that I've had in my life in a long time because they're just we all we're all from different parts of life. We all have different hot interests outside of slot cars. But when you get together for slot cars, we can have a great time just talking about cars and different racing stuff. So pretty much that's the Sacramento scene. We invite other people. I do it to my house at least, and I know Jim knows I invite 4 or 5 extra people, whoever wants to come. Some of the houses, like John Venus' house, is smaller, and if we have the 10 guys, that's all he can have inside his house. Anything more than that, there's no room in the house. But my house in Grizzly and my house that I have over here in Rio Vista, where the dirt track or the oval track is, I've got a little more room for people to move around and can invite more people. So if anybody is interested, please let me know. Coming up for races, like I said, we do them pretty much every 2 weeks. So we rotate through the people. The classes are determined by who the track owner is. So, and they post it about a month ahead of time. It's like, I'm going to run whatever. If we have a series, sometimes we'll say, okay, we're going to run a series. So we'll run an F1 series and we'll do 5 races in a row, all F1s at each different track, and then see who the total winner is. We've done some of those things as well. But it's a good group of guys. I know Mario's track. We raced at Mario's track last weekend, and Mario's track is called Scorpion Raceway, I believe. He's done a desert theme. It's really cool looking. He's got a big scorpion on the side. He's got the desert painted rocks, and it's all orange instead of being the usual brown or grays. It's all orange, and it's a really great little track. It's very technical track with a couple of not really jumps, but they end up being jumps if you go over them too fast because the elevation changes pretty quick on his track, and you'll go out. You will fly off out of the slot if you're not taking it. If you try to accelerate down the straightaway. So it really takes some control to run that track.
Well, that's a Tim Lang built track, so you know it's going to be a technical track.
Yeah, it's not a big track, 2-lane track. It's narrower than our other tracks, so we do get a lot of bumping on that track. It's a little narrower than our other tracks, and that's really all I've got for Sacramento racing. If anybody has any questions, be more than Mario's on the call too.
Well, let me give you just a little bit more background because Paul, you mentioned before Sidewinder, because most of us, me included, kind of came out of Sidewinder, and that's where we learned how to race and learned this 30-second scale slot car stuff. Before Sidewinder, there was a track in Roseville, and right by the fairgrounds, and it was actually owned by Tim Lang, who's built a few tracks in the area. And we started back then, and some of the guys transitioned over because Tim finally decided to couldn't afford the rent, basically, I think is the reason, because it's difficult to do. And a lot of those people transitioned over to Sidewinder. Tim had an interesting format. It was 3 or 4 lap heats. So you talk about, you better get the whole shot in his races. But that's kind of where we learned, even preceding Sidewinder. Like I said, I think John was there and a few other people. So that's even before Sidewinder. But Sidewinder is what, Bill and Billy, they really put it on the map, so to speak, in terms of a really viable hobby in the Sacramento area. So we obviously have to thank them for most of the people in Sacramento that are racing.
Right. No, and it was a sad day when they announced that they were closing. People just went, "What? What do you mean? What do we do?" It was like our church was closing and we couldn't go to church anymore. People were planning their vacations around Wednesday night racing. It was in some ways sad, but it was fun. It was just a good group of guys. And we had a couple, I know you were there, Jim. Our resident genius was at that point was Vince, who used to beat everybody every week. And it's just your whole goal is if you could just beat Vince once, you could go home and have a good night, because it really frustrated Vince. He didn't like losing. He did not want to lose in the worst way. He would go home and work hours on his car if he ever got beat. So I have one picture where I'm in the center and he's on the side. And you can see how sad he looks on the podium. And I'm like, I keep that picture just to show. I beat Vince once, and I think he probably came off a bunch or his car broke, but I don't really care. I know I came in, I beat him one time. So it was like, it was the thrill for me. Because when I started, they would have these weekend races. And the first one I went to, we had like 17 guys come to a weekend race. And we did a all day long. It was like half an hour heats. It was really crazy. I didn't, and I came in 17th out of 17. But as Bill said, well, at least you came in 17th. It's better than not racing. I said, that's true. And I slowly started getting better, and I'm still not the best, but I have a lot of fun doing it. So he was great at doing slot cars too. When he was like, you just have Tins, could you just look at my car and do something with it? And he would just, his car's bad. As soon as I drove one of his cars prepped by him, he was like, well, that's what they're supposed to drive like. I mean, it was just like, I knew why he was faster than everybody. His cars were better. His cars were just, he would be very precision with everything he did with his cars. And that's, so when he'd go to sell his cars, there would be a big line to see who could buy his used cars. Because even after he was done with them, they ran better than a lot of our cars. Now, a lot of us have learned better how to set stuff up now. But
yeah, I ran one of his cars one night on your track when it was at Sidewinder, and the thing ran 6.3, like right out of the box. And he goes, can I run this tonight? He goes, well, maybe not. So yeah, he figured that art out even beyond because we had it figured out fairly good when Sidewinder started, but he took it to another level.
He did, and he was just we had, I don't know what I'm trying to think of. He would loan cars to people, and every once in a while they'd beat him with one of his loaned cars, and they'd even be mad because he loaned them a fast enough car.
Yeah, but he'd loan you a car, you go half a second faster, and you're ever gone with your car.
Yeah, and we had in Sidewinder we had different divisions. It was like rookies, media, and beginners, and then experts. And you'd run one of his cars and you get a good time. So Bill would move you up to expert class. And now it's like, why need your car again? I can't stay in this class with running my cars because they don't run that well. And he was more than willing to show you what he was doing, but I still think he never showed you everything. I still think he showed you what he wanted to show you. And the other stuff was like hidden.
I remember we had a class at Sidewinder, and I can't remember, it was a GT class it had not handicap, but it had balance of performance. And so he would pick a car like an NSR or BMW Z4, and it had to have a certain motor, this and that. And it was a certain maximum weight, not minimum weight. Yeah. And he'd make it go fast and win. And so they'd put more of a handicap on that car, the BMW Z4. Yeah. And so he'd go to another one, make it fast.
Yeah, that was the FIA. We ran an FIA series. You had a certain ride height. You had everything, certain cars, certain motors.
That was it. Yeah, FIA.
They would change them every once in a while. They would decide, okay, well, that car's too fast. But you just didn't want to have the same car Vince had. Even though my car didn't go that fast, Vince had the same model. So they'd go, well, for that model, you have to go with a smaller motor. Well, my car can't go that fast. So I finally found a Black Arrow that nobody else had. So I could set it up my way and get it running as fast as I could. And I finally did fairly well with that. But then because if he got a hold of it, it would run even faster. Then they take my motor out. It's like, this is
Vince was the one that seemed to be changing the balance of performance on any given car that he would run.
He could make cars that look like nothing go, out of the box. Like I don't know what he did. We always, like I said, always wanted to know what he was doing, but he would tell us some stuff, but he never, just sort of like you, Jim. He doesn't tell us everything. He just tells us what we want to know.
So yeah, the Mike Wrights of the world, not me.
Oh yeah, Mike Wrights. I'm just not that oriented. I'm a registered nurse. I'm not a mechanic. I don't do all that kind of stuff. So I'm not as good at that kind of stuff, but I still love doing it.
So what if you would just guesstimate, or just what's the most, or your favorite class, or the class that is the most favorite among all the racers?
Well, I know we like the Sideways Group 5 is one of our favorite classes. Group C, Sideways is the Group 5 Sideways car, because there's a lot of different cars. You can race them and you can be competitive with different cars. What I don't like, and some of us in our group don't like, is when you end up with a class where everybody's running a Mosler. Everybody, like you did down when you were down there at your Electric Dreams, everybody's running the same group because it's the fastest. Who wants to watch a bunch of the same cars go around the track? It's more fun seeing some different things. And I think with the Group 5s, as well as normally with the Group Cs as well, we can have some different cars on the track. So that I think is probably our most enjoyable classes. Every track owner has some different things they like to do. I know Mario likes to change motors, do all kinds of things because his track is smaller. He can get away with it. On my track being larger, smaller motor cars just don't do it. You can't get enough speed going down that back straightaway. And then when you come to the hill, if you got too much speed, you fly off the hill. So you have to take it easy. And my proverbial kink that's on my track. If anybody's raced on my track, the kink at the top of the hill is a killer for people until they get the hang of it. It's just, I wish the kink wasn't there. I'm not sure why they put it in there, but it's there. I can't do anything. I mean, I talked about having it taken out, but then it's like, then it's going to change the track. So I just decided to leave it alone for now.
No, I think everybody's kind of used to it now. You kind of love it, hate it, but it makes things different for sure.
It does. It does. And we actually had a race the other week, but we don't have enough guys. I turn off lane 4. So we ran a 3-lane race because you can just turn one lane off when you do your rotations by just rotating, changing the rotation to 1, 2, 3. Lane 4 no longer works, so it gives us more turn marshals. Because at my track, I need to really have 4 or 5 turn marshals. Yeah. Otherwise, it's tough. I mean, we've had races with 6 guys where you come off, you have to turn marshal your own car, so you got to put your controller down, go get your car, and put it back on, which tends to make people drive much slower and not be crazy because nobody wants to run around the track and putting their own car back on, which was an interesting race that day. But you know, as Bill would tell you, our rule of thumb was if you don't like a turn marshal, don't come off. Because people used to try to blame the turn marshal for not putting their car back on, and it's not the turn marshal's fault that you came off. Maybe somebody else did hit you, but it's not the turn marshal's fault, so you can't really blame them. And I know for me, I would get frustrated with turn marshals as much as anybody. But like, just put my car down, please. Put it in some lane. I don't care what lane you put it in. Just put it down, because some guys would pick it up. Look at the bottom of your car, change your braid with your braids. Like, just put the car down so I can go. Or
well,
not
that's the one nice thing about digital racing. You can put it in any lane.
Well, that's true.
Not that I like digital racing. I've tried it and it doesn't appeal to me, but that's the one benefit to digital racing.
That's true. And again, I've never tried digital. The only thing I've ever done is wood race. I mean, I had a plastic track for a while when I first got to Sidewinder, so I could learn at home. And I realized it's so completely different than the wood routed track. That's why I had Billy build me that small wood routed track. But the other tracks, the guys have all built themselves. They built them at their own houses. They put them together. They've done all the work. I mean, Alan, when he built the Valhalla Raceway, he was trying to build it so he could actually lift it up against the wall. It would rotate up and rotate down, but he finally found out it was just going to be too heavy. It's going to take too much mechanism to make it work that way. So he finally just put it on wheels and he just rolls it out of the way when he doesn't want it in the way. But if anybody ever has a chance, it's a great track to run on because it's completely, again, different. Every track, everybody knows there's a certain lane that people don't like, or somebody really likes that lane and doesn't like another lane. It's very interesting to run the 5 or 6 different tracks that we run.
Yeah, I like your track. It's challenging. It's fun. There's some elevation change. It's landscaped. So it's a really fun track to race at.
It's a fun track.
And the track itself.
When it was at Sidewinder, I loved Atlanta. I did not like Florence because they were so different. Because mine's a little more technical than Atlanta was. I just didn't like it. But then when it closed, it's like, well, I don't have much of a choice. I can't put Atlanta in my living room. So I ended up with Florence, and now I love it. I mean, I love the track. Our times when we used to run the Florence track before, if you got into the 6s, you were doing good. A 6.9, 6.7, 6.8 was a good time on that track. Now, Mike Wright's run some 5 in the 5s in practice. He's never run a 5 in the race. But now people run low 6s, 6.1, 6.2 all the time. And we're all fat. All the guys have gotten faster. The track's got more rubbered in. I'm not sure why, because it was down there for 4 or 5 years being used. But the guys have all gotten faster, gotten more used to the track.
I think we've learned more about the cars. I think that's a lot of it.
We're doing better with setup. We got some, new techniques that people are trying, and everybody's very. And the one thing I like about our group, especially, and I know Jim, you're the same way, is people are helpful. Nobody's trying to hide stuff from anybody. It's not. I know when I first looked at slot cars at one track, and I won't name the track, I went in there and they didn't want to talk to you. They was like, "Oh, here's a car. Put it on. Go ahead and drive." It's like, "Oh, okay." And then I said, I'm trying to learn this hobby. I don't want to fight with people. I'm not trying to race. I don't need to be the winner. But I'd like to be competitive. Nobody wants to just get beat to death. You want to at least have a chance. So.
That's what we try to do with the website that Ian's put together, is have all that information out there, race results, schedule, and setup sheets on this is what we did to the car.
Yeah, and a bunch of us went down to, some of us have gone down to Modesto. About 4 or 5 guys from our group have gone down to Modesto and raced. And that's a fun track to do. It's just a long drive for a lot of the guys. Because
it is for you, yeah.
Well, it's not for me now in Rio Vista. Well, in Rio Vista, it's not far.
Oh, yeah.
2 hours. But it's like 3.5 hours from Grizzly. So it's like, okay, do I want to drive 6 hours to race slot cars when I got a track in my living room? And most of the time I don't. But it's and fast track is fine. It's the same way. It's it's a little bit of a drive for me, but for other guys, it's close. And I know Mario really likes going up there. I went up there and raced. I did the practice that day that you weren't there, Jim. And the car was fine. Then the next day, nobody seemed to be going to go. Nobody was going to be able to go that I knew. And I thought, okay, fine, I'm not driving up here by myself. So I didn't end up going back, but it's just busy for me. I've been busier now. I've been busier since I moved down here because I've gotten a little bit into RC stuff because there's an RC club where I live. So the guys run RC cars. So I've been doing a little bit of RC stuff, just having some fun with the dirt. There's a dirt track that they've built down here. So we used to run RC cars out there. So we run Rebo slots, and a lot of us have too many cars. I mean, we have a running joke about who has the most cars, and all I ever tell my wife is I have less cars than John Roberts and Mike Wright. I don't tell her how many cars I really have. I know she can see them. I don't hide them, but she knows.
Yeah, and it's not like this is being recorded and going to be put on YouTube or anything.
Oh, I don't care. I mean, I'm sure I have an excess of 500 slot cars. I mean, which is ridiculous. I have no reason to have that many cars, but I need one for each lane. I got a 4-lane track. I need one.
That's 100 for each lane.
Well, what can I tell you? We got about 20 classes, and some classes I really like more, so I have more of them. But we've started a rally series now too. We're doing what we call rally cars. So we're trying to work on that and trying to get which cars we want to run, which car, what kind of speeds, because different manufacturers you get some really fast rally style cars as opposed to, but we were looking for a slower class, something that, we're not trying to make another modern sports car class. We're just trying to run some rally cars. And we did that at Mario's house this weekend, and that was a fun class to run.
You didn't put powdered sugar on the track?
No, we didn't put any sugar on the track. My wife told me down here, this track we used to run, if anybody ran the dirt track, what was called the dirt, well, we call it the dirt bowl. I think they call it the speed bowl, Sidewinder. They used to put chocolate cocoa powder on the track. And you never knew what you're going to get. He'd pull a number before the race, and we're going to put cocoa powder on lane in quarter 3 and 4, not in 1 and 2. So it would be a different traction in every corner. And if you ran the first heat, you had more cocoa on the track. By heat 3 or 4, if you got a later heat, you were better off because the track was getting cleaned up then, and your tire you had less slipping. And of course, they say, well, that's just like real racing, but it was real hard when you were in the first heat. You couldn't, you were like. And practice was useless because it didn't matter when you practiced. It wasn't the same amount of cocoa on the track.
How big is that track? Is it like 6 by 14 or so?
It's 15 feet by 8.
8 by 15. It's a 4-lane oval.
4-lane oval.
You haven't seen it. The other thing that Paul didn't mention, in most of the classes that he had at Sidewinder, not only did he put cocoa powder on the track, but there was a spec motor, and it was 35K.
Yeah, with the big gear, because he wanted you spin. He wanted you sliding and spinning all over the place. And we did these. We made a class called I refer to them as the Bombers. They were Trans Am cars that we then cut the wheel wells out. You could move your tires out you could be big wide F1 tire kind of things on the back of the cars. You could stick the tires out. People were modified. They'd take the windshields out and put screen on like you were running a car.
They looked really good.
They were really, some guys really made some really cool looking cars. Mine don't look so that good, but they ran okay. So I was okay with that. It was a lot of fun. And we're starting to bring those back now that I have the track back up here in my other living. My wife has allowed me to put this Jerry's track. It's not mine. Jerry owns this track, but he had no place to put it up. So I said, hey, Jerry, if you want to stick it in my living room, we can run on it again. So we're starting to run on it again. Like I said, this weekend, we're going to do a race.
What happened to Atlanta?
Atlanta is at Jerry's. Jerry has it in his garage, I think, or has it someplace. I don't know where he cut it. It had to be cut into many pieces because it was so huge. And it was made as a whole solid track. It wasn't made on tables. My track was made on 4 tables. So I just had to simply cut the track on the top of the tables and then try to rebraid it. Jerry's track was Billy's first track he ever made, I think. Somebody else started it, and then he came in and finished it. And it was all one big, huge track with, like your roof had rafters underneath of it and everything else. So yeah. I think my favorite probably is still the Group 5 because I've got a couple good Group 5 cars that run very well. We only run them spec. We don't do anything to them. I mean, you can change tires, but that's it. Mostly in a Group, it's guide and tires is pretty much you can change on every car, and then Group C is the same way. Uh-oh, it's Jerry.
Hey, there you go. So talking about Atlanta, I know I took Atlanta from Sidewinder. The track itself was not, it was a permanent track. It wasn't a movable track. It wasn't a track that you can split and ship somewhere else. When we cut it, the way that the track was made, it was their first track that they designed and made. So it wasn't the very best way to build a track. So when we took it, we cut it in 4 different spots, and on transport it cracked because of the way the skeleton of the track was designed. So I have the track. I took it completely apart, and I have the layout. I'm keeping the layout for hopefully someday, we can someday, put that back together, or at least have the skeleton of the track, because the track raced very well. And Jim and Mario and Paul raced on it. I raced on it myself. I got to Sidewinder really late. I mean, it was probably 2 months before they shut down, so I didn't have a long history with it. But it was a great track, and they did run. Quote me if I'm wrong. I believe they did run 6-hour races there, or a really long race there. So I know it ran.
We ran weekend races with maybe like 20, 30-minute heats.
Right.
And you had to run every lane.
I've been in this slot car game for a really, really long time. Really, really long time. So to give you guys a little background,
Jerry loves slot cars.
I love slot cars. I've been on 132nd slot car since I was 7 or 8. My dad actually had a track in Mexico with his buddies when the Skelectric factory was in Mexico. So I have the wood track at my house here. It's all put away. It used to be called X and Mex, and that's what they used to run. So when I was a little kid, I found it, and ever since that day, it's always been 132nd. And I've been doing this since I was 6 or 7. So, but I could never find anybody in my area. I'm from Monterey originally. Could never find anybody in Monterey that ran 132nd. Everybody ran the wing 124 cars, and I couldn't get into it. It wasn't my cup of tea. I'm not saying that it's bad racing. I couldn't get into it. So,
where are you now, Jerry?
I'm now in the Central Valley, just north of Santa Nela, in a town called Gustine off the 5. Okay. I ended up selling my house in Monterey recently. So I've been looking. I talked to Paul. I talked to the guys at the club, and we need something in Northern California, a store or a place where we can call ours for everybody in Northern California.
Yeah, Modesto and Fast Tracks, they're great, but they're not really ours.
Correct.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
And I think somewhere from Silicon Valley all the way up to Santa Rosa, there's got to be a building for us. I understand that for some of us, traveling is far, and I drove from Monterey to Sacramento every Wednesday, so that wasn't a problem for me. I drove 2.5 hours each way. So, but I understand that for some of us, leaving 10, 15 miles, it's pretty far. So I'm aware of that, but I think that we can come and find a common place where we can.
Yeah, we're kind of spread out because we've got Kiwi Mike in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Paul in Grizzly Flat, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's up past Placerville.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Essie's in Loomis, so he's very close to, relatively close to Fast Tracks. So we're kind of spread out. There is a track in Santa Rosa that we've raced on in the past. It has some major squeeze lanes, so a lot of people don't care for it, but it is a 4-lane routed track we run on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the tracks that Paul mentioned, the Sacramento area, plus Fast Tracks and Modesto. So it'd be great to have another one.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm keeping my eyes out to find something. I did find a building here in town, Gustine. It's in the Central Valley. It's about an hour and it's almost 2 hours south of Sacramento, and about an hour and 15 minutes east of the Bay Area. So, but it's a little small, but it's something can be put in there. But doing it right towards more central somewhere, I think it's something we can all talk about. Are
you thinking about something open to the public, or like a club where everybody get a key and you pay so much per month or whatever?
Yeah, something like that. We can all talk about it. Everything's up in the air, something that we can all kind of share and see what we come up with. I just think it's a damn shame that there's nothing and you know, it's a really long or big land space where there's no 1/32 scale dedicated tracks, and that's what I love and that's what I'm into. So as much as Motown and you know and even Electric Dreams, I raced on the track at Electric Dreams when it was at Nomad Raceway with Jim Cunningham, and I like it. I can't say that I don't, but it's a commercial track, and when you have scenery, it's a completely different experience. When there's it's 4 lanes, 5 lanes at the max, and you can hammer down. But as the bowl or the speed bowl that we have at Paul's, you may think, well, you're just going around in a circle. That can't be very fun. It's just circle, circle, circle. But it's a technical track because not every lane is the same. It's even lane spacing, but each lane has its own characteristics to come around. Lane 1, you would think, well, it's the fastest lane, but it's actually not the fastest because of the way that they designed it. So they wouldn't be the fastest lane. So with 4 or 5 lanes, I think at the very max, you still keep that 1/32 scale, and you can really appreciate it. But like I said, what we have, even at all the tracks that we run, I like Kiwi Mike's track. It's flat. You better know how you're going to set up that car for a flat track, and that's I like racing that track.
Yeah,
So,
I get what you're saying. I love Modesto. I really like racing there. It's competitive. We have 6 lanes, but it doesn't have this. I understand what you're saying. It doesn't have the feel like when you go to Paul's or Kiwi Mike's and you're in a garage and the track's got a little scenery to it. It's just got more ambiance or whatever you want to call it. So I like both of them, but I definitely get what you're saying.
right. So, but like I said, I mean, it's something we can all discuss later on. A lot of people will be like, well, Mario's track is too small. It's not big enough. But the track, with the scenery now, it's very interesting to run now. It's like we have a good time. It's a 2-lane track, but it races well. So, and he's been able to put hills and curves and what he does to it. So it's all the tracks have their own character to it. And
John Roberts' track is awesome. It's only like maybe what? Well, Paul, you may know the dimensions, like 6x14. It's very small.
Yeah, it's only 6x14. Yeah, because it had to fit in the room I had at my other house.
And it's 2 lanes, but it's an awesome track. It's just, if you've got 10 or 12 or whatever people, you're limited to 2 lanes. So just the obvious. But other than that, it's a great test track. I've driven a lot of laps on it. It's a lot of fun.
It's a great track. John Venus' track is a great track. It's called Twin Falls Raceway. He's done some awesome. I mean, some of the things he did with detail is like awesome. Let me see if I can show you guys. I'm at my house in Rio Vista today. I don't know whether you can see. This is the dirt bowl.
Yeah.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
This is the oval track. I have a bunch of my cars just set out on the track. There's not really a lot of landscaping on this track at this point. Jerry has to decide what he wants to do. But this is the track here in my room here. So we're going to be racing on this. And like Jerry said, lane 1 has a kink at the one corner. If you try to take that corner too fast, you will just fly off the track. So
the one thing that Billy did when he built those 3 tracks, some of the stuff I didn't necessarily agree with, but he always did something for a reason.
Yeah.
And like the cocoa powder, that was done for a reason. I mean, he thought that was a cool idea. A lot of people didn't, but he didn't just do stuff to be crazy. He did it for a reason. And so sometimes it works and sometimes it didn't.
No, it was fine. And we're still getting cocoa powder. You run your car on this track, the guide will be brown when you get done. There's still cocoa powder down in there. We vacuumed it, we've cleaned it, but you still get cocoa powder out of that central guide. Out of your guide.
We had an oval track in Sacramento again before Sidewinder at one of the guys' houses, and it was a blast to run on. Oval racing, if you've never done it, yes, it can be boring sometimes. Yes, it can be ugly, if you want to call ugly racing it sometimes, because there can be crashing. But when it's good, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's super competitive.
Yeah, it is a little boring when I'm by myself racing on it because it is just round and round.
Yeah,
I'd rather race a Grizzly because there's more technical stuff.
When you race by yourself, do you win?
Not always.
Okay.
Usually the track wins because I'll end up coming off. But but when we have the guys down here, it's great because you get some real competitive, and you have to run every lane. It doesn't matter which lane's better. You have to run in every lane. So it's not like you're going to get an advantage being late. You have an advantage right now, but the next time you're in the next lane.
Well, that's like your track, Grizzly Mountain, and Kiwi Mike's track. Lane 1 is definitely faster than lane 4, no question about it. But you got to run all 4 of them.
Yeah. And he just
There's never been a slot car made where one track is where it, other than just a straight figure eight, one lane is typically faster than the other. So
yeah. You have to have that crossover, and without the crossover,
Yeah.
you can't get the lanes the same length. So
yeah, but even with a crossover, a lot of we have all of our HO tracks have crossovers and that we race at the front, or most of them do, and they're not equal. There's some of the lanes are faster than the others, so you never know until you build it.
And we have guys that are faster in one lane. I'm fastest in lane 1 and 2. Lane 1 at my house in Grizzly. There's other guys who prefer lane 2, and they're faster there. They can't handle lane 1 because it's a little tighter. It depends on your car too. It's just it's a variable.
Yeah, and coming down the hill through the kink. Yeah, watch the video on YouTube because it's coming through the kink and then a pretty steep downhill into a 90-degree right. It's a challenging track. It's a good track.
So, and I'm glad I did it. If I had to do it again, I don't know that I would, because sometimes I wonder about what am I doing with this huge track in my living room. But the guys come up. We try to make it all day events, and that's the thing I think is helpful. When we used to do this like 3 hours in the evening, that's fine. But nobody wants to drive 2 hours for a 2-hour race and then have 2-hour drive home. So most of the guys, at least the Grizzly, we have lunch. We do all kinds of stuff. We have we do a little more of it. It's more of a whole day event than it is. Jerry, when he comes up, I try to have to throw him out of the house about 5 o'clock because he didn't want to drive back to Monterey. He wanted to have some fun racing.
So Mike Wright's there at 6 a.m. and Jerry's there till 5.
5, yeah. Luckily, my wife works till 8, so that's good. She's not around.
I don't think I've ever been there early enough that Mike Wright wasn't there.
Well, George beat him last week to Mario's house.
So. Well, Paul, I appreciate everything and appreciate you having the track and let everybody come and race on it. The racing in Sacramento is good. Mario, is there anything you want to say? Because you're also part of the group.
No, it's just, my track still needs a little bit more work and more detailed of landscaping. Once I get that all done and settled in, I feel comfortable with the way it looks. I want to go ahead and post it on the website that you guys are running. And I can probably host up to about 12 guys. But I do a bunch of different unique cars. I like to run modified cars sometimes. I like when the guys are able to change motors and run something different than the typical Group C or Group 5 cars. Like right now I'm testing an Alfa Romero by Slotted. I'm putting in a 12.5 motor in it. I know it seems really slow, but again, my track is smaller. It's a tighter track. And believe it or not, that small motor runs very quickly at my house.
It's got a good power band for the small tracks.
Yeah. And it's actually really nice. I mean, some guys like to run a 30 can motor. We just ran late model sports cars. Some of the guys ran a 30 can motor, and it is absolutely blistering fast on my track if you can handle it. But I found like a 22 from the NSR, which they don't really make anymore. 22 runs great. Even a 25 can motor runs great. It's just perfect for my track. So the smaller motor cans are absolutely fantastic. And so I like to run different types of cars like that. The rally cars we ran, like Paul said, there's a difference in times. I like the slower bit of the rally cars that were usually running like a 6.5. Paul and Mike Wright, they were running like 6.2, 6.3s, which is way too fast. And the difference in the rally cars, they're not competitive against each other, which I noticed. So we're going to work on that and try to figure out what we want to run, what's best for everybody.
What kind of rally cars are you running? Like some of the Scale Electrics ones or some of the other ones?
I was running
Scale Electric cars we were running.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, I was running an Avant Slot rally car, as well as John Roberts was running one of my Avant Slot rally cars. I think Mike, was running a Scale Electric. I forget what Mike had. He also had an NSR rally car that he was running. They were typically the cars with the two drivers, the driver and the map reader, and
so a real rally car, not just something that could be a rally car.
Yeah, no, something that actually had. We're trying to figure that whole thing out. My Avant slot cars come stock with 25,000 long can motors in them. They're very quick.
That would be an interesting series, is because I watched the rally cars in Europe and they put snow on the track, all that other crap. But anyway, we could anywhere put together a plastic track, 30 or 40 feet long on a small table, and have a portable rally track that could change and go anywhere and have a rally series. That might be kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, the rally car, and it's just something we're just looking for something different because a lot of us have got, we've done the other stuff enough. But I know mine was the Allen slot. Jerry has been selling so the SCX cars. Jerry's now the distributor for XCS for Northern California. So he sold a lot of us some the SCX rally cars, and they're really great cars. They're not competitive with the bigger motor cars, but they do. The SCX has a new motor now, which makes them more competitive than they used to be.
Are any of them four-wheel drive?
They're four-wheel drive, and they run well. I think, Gary, aren't they four-wheel drive?
Yeah. So the new, you guys can hear me?
Yeah.
So the new SCX with the new motor, those are not four-wheel drive. They're two-wheel drive. The older versions are obviously four-wheel drive. And the reason why SCX, when I talked to SCX personally, they got away with the four-wheel drive because right now they're back to being a small company. They're not being run by anybody else. Before it was Technic Toys, which is a big company. Then they went to Educa, which is another big toy company. So SCX now is a smaller company. And so they've decided to go with just rear-wheel drive rally cars. The new motor is a good competitive motor, a good strong motor. It isn't that wonky, RX motor from back in the day. And so they've decided to go with two-wheel drive. And it's a good competitive motor. And so we've been trying them, and as I get some in more from them, I needed to take some over down to Silicon so you guys can test them. I was going to give Kiwi Mike one so he can test it and see what he thinks of the new motor. But they're a lot better car now than they were back in the day, so they should be good. No.
That's good, Mario. Did you have something else you want to say?
No, that's it pretty much. Like I said, as soon as I get the track done and all set up where I feel comfortable, I'll let guys know when I'll post races, and I'll probably end up doing it as a like a reservation type of thing, because I know some of the guys in our group don't really want to run some of the classes that I like to do. I know Mike O'D mentioned one of the last meetings that he wanted to do certain cars that were, modified and something different. So maybe Mike might be interested.
Don't encourage him.
Don't encourage him. Yeah, he may be interested in running something that, I come up with. So I'll let everybody know when I'm ready for that.
Sounds good. So that's an overview of 32nd scale racing in the Sacramento area with lots of tracks. I definitely want to thank Paul Hendricks, Mario Alvarado, Jerry Campos for sharing their tracks and what's going on. So this is Jim Rose with NorCal Slot Car Scene, and we'll see you at the races.